Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome into another edition of Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me on X at Nicholas M. Craig or check out my website, nickcraig.com. Joining me, as always, the man that puts the I in Brian. Brian with an I, Aldridge. What's going on, buddy?
Not too much. Of course, if you find me, you can get me at Voice Computer on X, or of course at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Getter, Truth Social, and whatever's going to exist between now and the end of the year. So
it's interesting. The topic says ARC. Yet it says there's no topic set. So I wonder if I click that. It does work. Okay.
All right.
It does.
There we go.
All right, well then let's roll into the first topic then. It's not AI. It's Google, Brian. They got absolutely hammered in a court this week, and a judge apparently says that they are a monopoly, but it's specifically in regard to search, right?
Yes. Yeah, this is specifically for search. And so this is going to be something that I'm still interested to see what the outcome is going to be as far as how big the ramifications will be, because it says they violated Section 2 of the Sherman Act by maintaining its monopoly in two product markets in the United States. So that was that global search services and general text advertising. Not only their search, but also the advertising that goes next to it through its exclusive distribution agreements. So these agreements, they struck to be the default search engine for various platforms, whether that be Apple's Safari browser, Firefox, Android phones. Some very U.S. carriers were setting them as the default search engine. And they say that that's very valuable real estate. So, that this is something that Microsoft kind of went through this back in the day when it came to the browser war.
I was going to say, they got the reason that Microsoft was taken to court and was broken up was because they were essentially strong-arming computer manufacturers to make sure that IE was the default browser when Netscape Navigate, which I knew. Funny enough, I watched a documentary about this like last week. I forgot that Netscape Navigator was a paid browser, which is almost unbelievable to think now that you would pay.
Well, because you didn't have a browser built into your computer. The first with Windows, if I remember correctly, Windows 95, it didn't come with
it did not
with browsers, and so you would go and somehow get a copy of Netscape Navigator. You get it on a disk of some sort. You'd get it onto your computer, and then bam, you had a web browser to go on the internet. Later, then Microsoft came out with Internet Explorer and put that in to where it was installed all the time. But at first, these computers were not meant to be on the internet. I mean, Windows 95 was kind of the beginning of that. I was talking about MSN Chat. I had MSN Chat. That was very few things that were on the internet were actually on a computer at that time. But here,
but to kind of why Microsoft got in trouble, not only did they strong arm computer manufacturers and everything, they made that huge deal and essentially saved Apple from bankruptcy by installing Internet Explorer, Word, Office, Excel, all the Microsoft products on early versions of OS X. And they literally went from no market share to like 70 or 80% of all internet browser market share in like 3 or 4 years. And they were taken to court and a judge found that they in fact were a monopoly. And it seems like some of the similar practices, obviously Google is not a software. It's not software that you install. You could use their browser, but they've struck so many deals and have made so many, contracts and agreements with people that they are the default search browser, unless you're using something like Brave or I guess one of those other alternative browsers, Firefox, and obviously Google Chrome default to it. I use Chrome, but Bing's my default browser or default search engine. But this could be a huge problem.
Well, and here's where they say that it becomes a problem. Is that they act in a monopolist way. I mean, and then they act in a monopolistic way. Yeah, and then they acted to maintain that monopoly. So that's what really got them in trouble. You could be a monopoly and not actively be pursuing that, but just because your product's so good or whatever it is, you become that. They did steps to maintain that monopoly, and that's what I think got them in trouble. They said that violates Section 2 of the Sherman Act.
Mm-hmm.
Google's distribution agreements are exclusive and have anti-competitive effects. So they said it states that it uses that monopoly to charge supra competitive prices
That's a good
for
question.
general search text ads, those above sustainable market prices.
Yeah, would you
It
like
says
to know
Google.
the
Yeah,
like
what's
to know the
supra?
definition?
Because I have a guess, but let's hear
Okay.
what it is.
So according to Wikipedia, the truth of the book of knowledge, supra competitive pricing is pricing above what can be sustained in a competitive market. This may be indicative of a business that has a unique legal or competitive advantage or of anti-competitive behavior that has driven competition from the market. So this would be the Google AdWords program that they're talking about here, where if you're a local plumber or an HVAC guy or a florist or whatever, you go to Google, you subscribe to AdWords, you set a couple $100 or a couple thousand or hundreds of thousands, depending on the size of your business, of dollars per month that you put into text advertising. So when you go to, let's see, let me open an incognito window so that we can see what it actually does. HVAC near me. And you get this you get the Google search listing that comes up, and you'll see right here, this first one has this sponsored tag next to it, green dot HVAC. They're paying for this.
For that position.
For that position. And so that's just one example of this is the kind of text advertising that they're talking about, because this is the first search result, Brian, right? It's when I Googled it, this is the first one that came up. They must be the best. They're paying for it, which is not inherently a bad thing. I think AdWords is it's a big business. I mean, there's what used to be SEO people that did that full time that now do Google AdWords and Google Business Profile Management full time. I wouldn't do this, but a good friend of mine uses an ad blocker, so they don't see these sponsored ads. And I use Bing, so I don't see it at all. But this is the issue.
Well, in here, one thing they said is that Google was able to increase text ad prices without any meaningful competitive constraint.
Sure. What are you going to do?
Because there was nobody.
Go buy on DuckDuckGo. Go buy their AdWords. Yeah. I mean, who cares? Nobody uses it.
That's the thing is because Google is such a monopoly, which this really puts that in perspective. They could set their prices to whatever they want, and someone will pay to be the top ad. I'm sure there is a point where people will tap out, but they were just pushing it beyond where if there was a competitor, someone would say, hey, I'm going to go list on the competitor's site instead. But here there's not really a competitor against Google at the time. And I keep hoping that AI fixes this problem, because AI should be able to do a better search engine than what Google provides as far as answers that make sense.
According to StatCounter.com, this is July of 2024, so last month, Google had a whopping 91.04% share of the search engine marketplace. 91%.
So what is
it's
it
freaking
cost?
Insane. Look at the chart. The chart doesn't even mean anything. It might as well not even be there. I mean, Google's red line, no pun intended, and everybody else is just above the margin of error. It's not even close.
Here's the problem for Google is that when the government steps in and does this, I mean, look at what happened to Internet Explorer. Internet Explorer really doesn't even exist anymore. And they're not on newest versions of Windows.
All right.
It's going away. Edge is here.
But I think that's a bad analogy, because also what happened with Internet Explorer, as we know, Microsoft is inherently a terrible company when it comes to their browsers. Or their software.
Well, they want to
many cases
maintain backwards compatibility.
Yeah,
in a product that shouldn't be that backwards compatible.
I mean, let's look at why Google Chrome first. Well, let's look at why and going back to the browsers, let's look why Google Chrome became so popular. It was a multi-threaded browser that meant you could have, if you had a fast enough computer, you could have a gazillion tabs open and the browser could actually operate because it wasn't locking everything to a single thread or a single core on a processor. The extensions marketplace has literally changed the way that people use the internet. IE never introduced any of those features. Edge, which is based on Chromium, has that stuff now. But what was the last version of IE 9? I think was the last like big
Something
version
like
of
that,
Internet Explorer. It didn't have any of that stuff. It was a crappy old 90s archaic browser, Brian. They never updated it. So
well, okay, and that part of that because they tried to use it for business, and then they would have people write apps that locked into a browser. But then when you go and change the infrastructure of the browser, which is an internet thing, so it has to change on a regular basis, you can't do it. Either you're going to break all backwards compatibility with those stupid apps, or you're going to maintain security standards. And I think they finally realized we can't do both. And it took them a long time to get there.
Yeah. Well, look at Silverlight, which was baked into browser. Most major banks for a period of time had their entire platform based on Silverlight, which is that's what a Java that was Microsoft's JavaScript, or it was some they were trying to compete with somebody, so they built Silverlight. I don't remember exactly what it
like Flash. Was it more of like a
maybe
Flash
it was
competitor?
That's exactly what it was. It was their Flash
I think it was
competitor.
a Flash competitor.
So they built Silverlight. A whole bunch of people brought Silverlight web applications in, which just sucked. It was a royal pain, and that was a disaster. And it's just they owned the market and then failed to own the market because they didn't innovate. I guess the one good thing with Google is because it's not a software, what innovation do you need? I mean, it's a search engine. And I was down the rabbit hole of trying to find something from the 1960s last night. My default browser is Bing, or search engine is Bing. Big Bing rewards guy over here. Xbox Live, free Domino's Pizza, free Amazon gift cards. Not a sponsor. And I was getting terrible results with Bing, as I would expect. So I switched over to Google and still didn't find what I needed because it doesn't exist on the internet apparently. But I was able to get closer to what I was looking for in my Google search results than my Bing. And I did try DuckDuckGo, which was even somehow worse than Bing. So yeah, I mean, they're good. They're good. And I don't, as you mentioned this at the top, what are the ramifications of this? What is Alphabet going to have to spin off Google into a separate company? Do they have to?
This is kind of why they did that in the first place, right? This is why they created out.
Is Gmail part of Google search? Like, is there ties?
That's why they split it off into Alphabet, because they could create all these little sub companies that then couldn't be taken down with the whole of Google, right?
But what if they have to stop integration? That's what I'm saying. Well, like, everything is tied together. Your Google account is your YouTube account. It's your Gmail account. It's your marketplace. If you have an Android phone, your Google Play Store. All of this stuff is intertwined with Google, the search engine. How is that going to work?
Maybe they need to treat Google Google Search as more of its own product, and quit trying to show all these things inside of. So, like, you go to Google.com, and you've got on the upper right. Go to Gmail. You want to do an image search? You want to look at your photos? What app do you want to run? And they treat it like a launch pad. I think that's their mistake. Now, you can go and click from some of these others. You'll also have that window there, right?
Yeah.
But I think they need to treat Google Search as a tool, a utility, separate, that you can use, and don't claim that it fits under the umbrella of all this. Because unless it's a business application, your average Google user isn't doing things to influence their search. They're not managing a business. Like, I manage businesses for search, and I do things like that. Your average person, they need to break that off and say, all right, here's business that manages Google search, and just make it its own thing. Quit pretending that it's all this, because they want it to feel like you're in a portal. That's why they created the Chrome operating system and all this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they're now finding that this may not be, them viewing them as one giant thing, which they claim they were getting away from with Alphabet. But really, that's what they want. They want to be the thing. And that comes with a lot of restrictions. The government's going to, now, maybe here at the end of the year, it will be less of a problem. But, I don't know if they're going to keep pursuing this in a different administration.
Now, I will note that the ruling from this judge, it's like 300 pages. It does not have any sort of fine or action listed at the end of the document. However, Google cannot continue as it is after this without sanctions. So what they do, does it appease the court? I don't know. This happened. When did this happen? I think yesterday.
Yeah. This is recent.
So this is with it's too soon to know what, if anything, will happen. This might end up being a big nothing burger. I mean, literally nothing might change. But there's a possibility something does, and I'd be very curious to see how that goes down.
Yeah, and this will be something that if something does come of this, I think it will be good in the end, because we really do need diversification when it comes to search. And I don't think you need to hold back Google to do that, but I think you need to make sure that they're not just using their leverage to make it impossible to get into the market to compete with them.
But
that's where the prices come in, the dollar amounts.
They do. I don't use Google as a default search engine. I do use it as a search engine, but it's not my default on my main computer, my laptop, and my phone. Again, I use Bing. This is the market share. Obviously, users are choosing Google. They have other, if you open your iPhone, you can search in all of these other engines. It's not, I use the Brave browser on my iPhone, and that when you set a default search engine, but then when you type something in, you can choose which search engine you'd like to use if you want to use an alternative one. Everybody is using Google because it has the best results. And I hear what you're saying, and I'm not a Google fan or apologist or anything like that. I'm not an Android user. I'm not in love with the company. But Brian, I don't really, there's nowhere else to go. If you're a small business and you want to get in front of 91.04% of users with your plumbing business, you're going to go to Google and you're going to buy ads on AdWords. Why the hell would you go to Bing?
Only so many slots. There's only so many slots. They're selling, you can only show an ad, a certain number of times. If you have millions of people putting in ads, your ad may never be seen, so they get them down to certain demographics. But that's why I was hoping AI search would be something that would bring competition, something where you could, in human terms, ask a question and it will give you the research that someone with some knowledge and know-how of navigating Google search results and kind of finding things would bring you a similar result, right? That's what I was hoping, to where I could get realistic information. But, we saw what happened with AI. It became so biased. It's no better than Google when it comes to bias in search results, where that kind of took away my hope that AI would turn search around.
Precisely.
Until they start being honest and they start having AI give factual information and not politics and whatever, one side, you're never going to have honest search results. And so AI is not going to work for that. It's going to be too easy to prove.
I tend to agree with you. I don't know what happens here. It doesn't. I don't. What are you going to do? Stop being the best result place for search?
Yeah.
Stop being the best search engine?
What happened is natural, because if there's a ton of people going for that top slot when you're the 90 whatever percent market share, the prices are going to have to go up, or else everybody's going to buy tons of cheap ads, and you only have so many spots to be able to put those ads into.
Sure. And that's a real problem.
Right? And that's why the cost of something goes up, because of the demand for it. And so I don't think they necessarily did this totally on purpose. I think they fell into it and didn't try, why would you try to stop it?
Yeah.
Things are going really well. They just got caught.
And, the one thing, and obviously, going back to the original thing, it was, they have coined all these deals with all these places and all these companies to be the default search engine. Sure, that's an issue. But everybody knows of the alternatives. Everybody knows what Bing is. There's a lot of people that know, and I say a lot, not everybody, and maybe not even a majority of people, they have heard of DuckDuckGo. They've seen DuckDuckGo advertises on broadcast television. They advertise all over YouTube. These things do exist. So when these things, like, they're out there, they're easily accessible. You can change your default search engine in Google Chrome, as I've done, to Bing. Still nobody wants to use it because at the end of the day, Google makes the best product for search. Plain and simple.
And I use Bing for AI search. Like, I don't use Bard. So that's where I keep hoping that maybe Copilot will become a competitor.
Yeah, and it does well. Like, the thing. So I was again searching for something last night. I was doing it on my phone because I was in bed, and it was a very specific thing from a commercial from the 1960s that I was looking for. Very specific search query. And there was an option at the bottom, because Bing didn't return me any decent results, to do a deep search. And then it pulled up this like weird like AI search menu, and then it tried to do it, and it provided me different results. They still weren't any good, but it did do that. So they are kind of doing that incorporation. I've never seen it on the regular Bing browser when I search something. This kind of deep search is, I think, what they called it. But it does exist. And the question is anybody, again, nobody's choosing to use those browsers, or 4% of the public is.
Because for me, I've always found in the past I'm able to get to the answer I'm looking for better with Google. I've tried using other ones. And that's why I use. For AI, I just use Microsoft because I'm hoping that I can kind of, get to where I'm satisfied in finding the answers I want with that. But until someone else comes out with a search engine that makes you feel like you're getting the answer that you want at roughly the same speed as what you get with Google, then people are going to continue to go to Google until that happens.
But Brian, look at the points.
I know.
41,921 points ready to redeem.
You get some Xbox.
Not just Xbox. Look at all this stuff you can get.
I'm saying
grocery cards, CVS, Carrabba. I mean, who doesn't love a little Carrabba's, Brian? Amazon. Look at Roblox, right up your alley. You're a huge Robloxer.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I love
Spotify Premium. The sweepstakes.
Yeah, I've only got I'm just under 4,000 points on mine.
Yeah, and then look at all the Xbox gift cards, free Microsoft apparel. I mean, who wouldn't like a cool little Microsoft cup? Minecraft coins, League crap. Look at all this stuff. Why are you not using Bing? Free gift cards, folks.
I've got 4,000 points. I mean,
that's nothing. That's not even a $5 Walmart gift card. Well, I'm only a level 2, but I still have a shit ton of points.
Yeah, with streak protection, I don't even know what all this stuff is. All right.
There's a lot of Brian. There is
a lot of crazy.
Everybody's got to use Bing.
Yeah,
it's a great service.
I've been working on it,
and you get free. I mean, literally free stuff. Like, you can get a $10 Amazon gift card for like 10,000 points. Not that that's game changing, but you're searching anyway.
I'll try to start making myself. What I should do is just change my default window to Bing,
and that's what I do. My default is Bing, and every once in a while, especially so, there's like the other thing too that Bing doesn't seem to really do a good job with, and you will probably struggle with this, is programming things. So you get an error in a program or in a website or some weird PHP error, and you copy this long string and you dump it into Bing and it's useless. You dump it into Google and then you get a Stack Overflow as the first result with the exact PHP issue and then the solution. So that stuff, and it's gotten better. It's not as bad as it used to be. Yeah. But then, just open up a new tab, Google it, and bada bing, bada boom. No pun intended. So use Bing.
And that's something. Now, especially for code things, I just use Visual Studio Code, which I have my Copilot plugin in, and I'll just put the code that I'm looking at, and I'll put the error message, and then I'll have it, give me perspective on the error, rather than going to Google. I don't really go paste code or errors into Google anymore. So that's one thing that I've been able to get past. So that's helped me use Google a lot less. All right, here. There's one other legal thing here I wanted to mention to you that I think is going to have some pretty big ramifications. And
Okay, what you got for us?
something. This is something that happened just under a week ago. Yeah, it was on Wednesday. But the U.S. Senate passed online child safety bills.
Interesting.
And this is one where it could impact game platforms significantly, according to, and this is GameIndustry.biz that reported on this. So the Kids Online Safety Act and the Children and Teens Online Privacy Protection Act passed in the U.S. Senate yesterday. So this was on the 30th that it passed, potentially bringing significant changes to online platforms if the bill gets approved by the House of Representatives. Both bills would apply to games platforms aimed at protecting children online and were approved in a bipartisan 91-3 vote. KOSA, which is the Kids Online Safety Act, would introduce a duty of care for tech companies when it comes to kids using their platform, requiring them to have stronger regulations to avoid cyberbullying, sexual exploitation, and more. The bill would also see users have to prove they meet a platform's age requirement to avoid minors using products they shouldn't. Then COPA 2, which is the Child and Teens Online Privacy Protection Act, it builds on the 1998 COPA that they have. That's why they call it COPA 2.0. Would ban advertising targeting minors as well as their data being collected without their consent. It also aims at giving more control to parents and their children who could ask for their information to be deleted from social platforms. The two bills are considered to be the first. Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. This is what TikTok just got nailed for when they just got taken, or they're in the process of. I think it's probably the FTC again. Lena Khan, the loser that she is, and I don't mean she's a loser as a person. She just loses everything she brings forward. They're bringing TikTok to court specifically because of this, because they're selling information of individuals under the age of 13 years old, and they do not have the proper things in place to have parental notification on. That's exactly what is screwing TikTok right now, because they don't know how to handle. And it's funny. We talked about this on Computers 2K Now on Sunday. Facebook, still, you cannot have an account if you're under 13. Yeah. They decided we're not even going to bother with this because it's such a pain to deal with. So we're just not even going to do it. But like Roblox, TikTok, all of these other services that kind of deal with minors, and individuals under the age of 13, this is a legal freaking nightmare to try to have to deal with this stuff. These places have no choice, because was it like 70% of Roblox users are under the age of 16 or something, some ridiculous number?
Yeah, something crazy like that.
You have no choice, but Facebook just said, screw it, we're just not going to deal with it because it's too much hassle.
And it feels kind of like a GDPR for
a little bit,
for the United States for kids. Yeah, because that's what they did in Europe in general. Like, they put all these regulations on collecting information on people, and you had to, which to a point it can be good. But this right here is specifically for kids, which I think makes a little bit more sense. And we'll see what comes from it. Of course, this is in the House, right? It's in the Senate, passed that, or they created it, passed it, and now it's going to go to the House, which is a little bit different, but I don't see, unless there's something hidden in this, or if it really brings in some crazy stuff of them, with cyberbullying, of them classifying as you not acknowledging their gender, and then they can come after you and some crazy.
Sure.
Unless something like that is snuck in there, I would expect to see this probably pass the House as well. In my opinion, I don't know. I of course I haven't read all the details of it in the fine print, but if it's, of course, this is game industry. Usually they're not crazy outspoken politically, but they've made it sound like it's a pretty no nonsense bill for the most part. So we'll see what happens. But if it does pass, you'll see some big changes when it comes to just creating accounts for children.
Yeah,
or creating accounts for adults, because you have to prove you're not a kid.
Then you go to the China system of verifying your identity with the
which kind of is X's claims to be something like that, right? I mean, as far as you get the badge, and so, people are pissed off because you weren't really confirming that you were the person that you claimed to be.
Yeah.
As you said, that's probably the next step, is getting to where you have some sort of a universal identification system that proves that you are the person you claim to be.
Real bad news.
Yeah.
Real bad news.
Kinds of stuff.
Speaking of things changing, Brian, a legacy video game publication is no more. Game Informer, which has been in production for 33 years. I can imagine you were a subscriber at some point to Game Informer.
Well, I mean, I got a couple of them, but not for very long.
Okay.
I didn't do a lot of console games, so.
They were in production for 33 years. Most recently, they were owned by GameStop. And when you signed up for, help me, what was the GameStop
rewards program?
Yeah. Power Plus, Power Up, I think is what it was called.
GameStop Pro, but they called them.
I remember the card. I can
Power Up Rewards.
Power Up Rewards. I can literally still envision. I probably have the card. I have a little thing with all my old cards in it. So when you became a member of that, it was like $20 a year or whatever, and you got some minuscule discount on anything at GameStop. You would get a free copy of Game Informer that would get sent to your house every month or whenever they published. But it's interesting. They were still producing a physical magazine, which I can't believe.
When everyone else stopped.
I mean, literally, newspapers don't have any circulation yet. Game Informer was still doing its thing. I guess that maybe goes to show you the how popular, in some respects, GameStop still was, that people were still getting this. But what I found interesting is that they cut everything off cold turkey. They're not continuing as a web publication. They're just done. So no more GameInformer.com, no more Game Informer magazine, which you would expect. But the website is gone.
So the editor-in-chief had posted to X this kind of farewell. And it says, the final level, farewell, from Game Informer after 33 thrilling years of bringing you the latest news, reviews, and insight from the ever-evolving world of gaming. It is with a heavy heart that we announce the closure of Game Informer. From the early days of pixelated adventures to today's immersive virtual realms, we've been honored to share the incredible journey with you, our loyal readers. While our presses may stop, the passion for gaming that we cultivated together will continue to live on. Thank you for being a part of our epic quest. May your own adventures never end. And then the next day, they closed their X account, and so that post went away. So that was just a copy of what was on there.
So now it's on their website at GameInformer.com. I'm just curious as to why they didn't continue as a digital publication, or not even a publication, just a website like everybody else. I find that odd.
Yeah.
Like why do you have to? Why do you have to? You're cutting off the head, which is the magazine. Well, I guess okay, that's a bad analogy. You're cutting off the leg, which is the magazine. Why are you also cutting off the head? I mean, Game Informer is a very reputable brand. It has huge name ID in the video game realm. I'm just surprised that they're just done. And maybe this is a sign of GameStop as well, as they're trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do. Yeah. So
because they don't want to have this ongoing cost, so they let every bit of their staff go. They did the whole.
Yeah, it's just gone.
Yeah, there was nobody left there to even maintain anything. That's why they closed all their accounts. They don't want anybody to be responsible for anything, and they just walk away from it. So we'll see. Maybe this is a hint at upcoming news from GameStop.
Pour one out.
Preparations for things.
Pour one out for the old Game Informer. Not going to do this because it'll ruin all my stuff. But yeah, pour one out for Game Informer. That's it's interesting. I remember they used to have all the demo. You used to get all the demo discs in Game Informer, which was real cool. That's obviously been gone for I don't even know how long at this point. But yeah, rest in peace. They did 1991, Brian. They had a total. This is crazy. This says they had a circulation in 2017 of 7.5 million.
Yep. You said 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's when things really started going
down.
That's
a high number to have in 2017 as all of the everything had already transitioned online in 2017. Yeah. Like 2017 wasn't 2010. That's just I think it's because
people like the color picture. I mean, they maintained a bright magazine. And they probably were able to get exclusive interviews about upcoming projects. This is something where if you can maintain that kind of exclusivity and bring them content, people will check out your magazine. It gets a lot harder with the internet and websites being able to do almost the exact same thing with minimal costs compared to a printed magazine that you're shipping out to people. But I think they maintained it for a pretty long time because they kept putting that content in there, talking about upcoming games and using the leverage of probably things they had because of GameStop.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
GameStop.
They had a built-in sales pipe, I'll call it, because of how many brick and mortar GameStops still do, and for at least the time being, will continue to exist. And there obviously enough people had the power. I don't think there were many Game Informer. I don't even know if you could subscribe to Game Informer outside of the GameStop membership thing. Maybe you could. I don't know. But I find it. I guess you're right. They're just in such a position of cost cutting that they just say, slice the neck and we're done. I guess. Rest in peace.
Well, and that's something we've seen a lot with with our economy news. Just looking at how some of these studios, when it comes to video games, have dealt with some of these things, and some of them have just had to pretty much cut, right?
I'm glad you brought that up. Because you have this kind of, it's not buried. It's kind of buried in our economic news, which we really need to do. Maybe not, we're off next week. I'm out of town. Maybe the week after we just need to do another economy show. Did you read this story about this group known as Prytania Media, who is claiming that the reason that their studio closed down is because of Kotaku and an unreleased article? Did you read this story? It's I don't even understand. So this group, this studio shut down, and in an email to employees, the co-founder attributed the closure of his video game studio to a yet published, so not published yet, a yet to be published article on Kotaku, which makes no sense at all.
It must have been something that made them look pretty bad, right? He knew that when that article came out, it probably would not be a company anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, how bad could it be? I mean, how can their studio be making something that is that bad and still have people employed?
I guess so. I don't really understand anything about it at all. They have a game that was called Project Vognut that has yet to be released. It never came out, and apparently it's Kotaku's fault.
Well, and I'm looking through some of this. They're commenting about some other closures of other studios. I saw in here they said Undead Labs was acquired by Microsoft in 2018, according to a 2022 report by, Gatch? After its acquisition, the studio faced a problematic transition period in which Microsoft's hands-off approach allowed dysfunction to fester, leaving some of the studio's more vulnerable employees to fend for themselves. What does that mean?
Well, I thought they wanted Microsoft. I thought Microsoft was this big evil corporation, and they allowed a company to run themselves into the ground, and now they're the bastards for doing it? That doesn't make any sense. I thought Microsoft destroyed everything.
Well, that's what this has to be something where they're pushing for some sort of like maybe trans employees, some sort of vulnerable. Because when they say vulnerable employees, they can't fend for themselves. Like, what's that?
Yeah, what the hell does that even mean? Well, I mean,
is it someone who has is mentally challenged, where they are a vulnerable adult? I mean, that's what a vulnerable adult is, right?
No, there's not.
Someone who has mental challenges, they can't fend for themselves. They call them vulnerable. They're calling this employee vulnerable. So you're hiring somebody who's either mentally or physically challenged. That's what you're telling me. They're vulnerable. They don't have the ability to take care of themselves. They have to be a protected class, right? Isn't that what that means?
Brian, under what I'll call previous world definitions of our society, yes, that is what that would mean. Under the very challenging times that we live in now, I couldn't tell you what the hell a vulnerable employee is. But I just don't.
Yeah,
but hold on, before we go to that, I have to go back to the point that The Verge in this article is somehow dogging Microsoft for saying, oh, they had a hands-off approach on a studio they acquired. Isn't that what we want? I thought the whole issue was that Microsoft acquires all these game studios, takes them in, fires 3/4 of the employees, and just takes the IP. This is proof that they're not doing that, and The Verge is still bitching and complaining about Microsoft. It doesn't make any sense.
I know,
what do you want? You want them to either rule with an iron fist when they acquire, or you want them to let these stupid publishers run themselves into the ground. You have to pick. You can't have both.
Well, the problem is they want it to go only have one outcome, because they want it when they go in there. We're hands off, and then the whole LGBT thing just is crazy at that studio. That's what that side wants. But then they say, oh, now here's one that's more of a, opposite of that type of a studio. Don't want that. Well, okay, we have our pendulum here. This is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. Here's acceptable, right? Well, you like this, but you don't like this.
Yes.
But this is okay, but this is not okay, right?
For our audio,
how about this is supposed to be the standard?
For our great audio listeners, Brian is frantically moving his left hand back and forth as if it was a gas gauge in a car, talking about this and this and that and this and this and that. I just don't get it. What? But this guy's a scumbag for claiming that an unpublished article is the reason for his studio closure. What a douche. That's absurd.
They were probably going to go. They probably were going to go after him and claim that it was a homophobic studio and all this crazy stuff. I bet you that's what the article went into. I attacked them, and he rather instead let's just fire everybody. I guess,
but I mean, this is just another game studio that closed. I mean, it's unfortunately at this point just another statistic over the last 2 years when we've watched what I think you can accurately describe as a complete and total bloodbath in the video game industry. Yep. These studios are getting absolutely annihilated by the economy.
Oh, I do want to, since we hinted into this a little bit, I just want to touch onto this article.
Okay.
Because this is going to be separate.
Brian?
So I want to read you the title of this. How to Survive Until 2025 in the Game Industry. Why do they care about surviving? Why is 2025 going to be such a different year that they're trying to survive to that line? What is changing after that 2025 that makes it to where they feel like they need to just hold on for everything they got to last to that line? What's magically changing?
I can tell you. We are all going to rally behind Kamala Harris, and she is going to fix the economy. She is going to bring video games back to their... Stop. Don't interrupt me. She is going to bring video games back to their golden era, and she's going to solve all of our problems, Brian. That's what we're waiting for. We got to wait for Kamala to get in the White House and then solve the video game economy. She is going to be the savior of the video game industry. Is that what the article talks about?
So survive until 2025. The phrase still echoes around the games industry as it faces ongoing layoffs and studio closures. And they go into a lot of other things. Main thing I saw was, I thought the title was funny because they say, well, okay, you can go out and seek some funding from outside the game industry. They say that statement, and then they don't want to tell you why they said that statement. They say all the other things that you can do to survive, but why would you? They never say, why would I need to care so much about surviving to this magical line that they've created of 2025? Because if nothing changes, you could expect the same thing, right? To continue happening. So why would you care about that line? Because it's not going to change anything. You're going to continue your downward. Yeah. So I just thought it was funny. They make this statement like everybody, we all know what that means. Things are going to get better when Trump's in office. But we can't say it because we work for a video game industry magazine.
Yeah. I think that's very accurate. I think that's very accurate.
But they can't say it. So they don't give any insight into why they named this. Doesn't mention anything into why 2025 is special in any way, but they just give you all these things to make it this year. Just make it to that magical
How about
land
this, Brian?
Of 2025.
How about this? Preparing for the new normal. Revolution Software founder and CEO Charles Cecil finished off the session by reminding people that when things do settle, quote, it won't be the same as it was before. It's tempting to just say survive until 2025, but I think we need to do more than that. We need to work out what the effects of AI will be, what the impact of all of these incredible disruptive forces will be, aka Democrat policies. that are destroying the video game industry and the economy. So remain super cautious until that happens. He added that the current situation feels similar to 2008, when there was a double whammy of a financial crisis and digital distribution changing the game landscape.
Yeah.
So there you go. So they are just, so they're, you're right. They're
So the last time a Democrat crashed the economy is what you're talking about. Feels a lot like that.
You're right, Brian. They are wish casting in this article a change in leadership at the top, so that the economy will recover.
But they
so that
cannot say
they
it.
cannot say it because they'd lose their job. Well, here's the thing. I don't even think they know they're saying it. That's the craziest part about it. These people are so stupid, and they're so
they just
entrenched.
know something magical is going to get better in 2025.
But
they just know it's going to happen, but they won't line up this and this.
They are
come up
so
with that realization.
freaking entrenched in this liberal ideology that they are just assuming that when the calendar flips from December 31st to January 1st, everything is going to be fixed. But of course, as you and I know, and vast majorities of our audience know, what they're really saying is we need a different administration that can get the economy under control so that we don't see tens of thousands of layoffs like we've already seen this calendar year. It's freaking August, and there's already been like 36,000 layoffs in the video game realm. It is a freaking bloodbath.
Yeah. I want to mention something else I noticed in this article.
Okay.
So at the top, you have a nice diverse set of developers and studios that list them there.
But sure.
But let's go down and see who they feel like, has something to say in the article. Let's look at some of the pictures.
Okay.
So they've got a number of a female. Look at there, a female representative from the video game industry. Let's see if there's who else has a voice to say and has something important that's worth noting. This article.
We're reading through.
Well, look at that. That's why she must have a lot of insight into the video game industry as well. Let's keep going. I mean, because these are obviously the top people in the video game industry that know everything about it.
We're reading our article very diligently. Here we go.
Look at that. Well, that she must also have a lot to say. I think it's funny when they try to talk about diversity. You notice what they don't do?
Be diverse at all.
They had quotes from men and from people from someone from Asia, but instead they put the 3 white women on there as their representatives because we wouldn't want to show a picture of anybody else.
The first lady is not white. Her last name is Ella Romanos. I assume she's Latinx.
But they classify as white
term?
still. Yeah.
No, they
but
don't.
they still classify themselves as yes.
No, they
That's
don't.
why they ask them the things. Are you around
white,
here? If you fill out something,
non-Hispanic.
You say white, not Hispanic, because they will clarify. That's why they had to put it on the form because the Hispanic person will say they're white. So that's why they put white, not Hispanic, because a Hispanic person will always put I'm white.
Riddle me this,
Not
Brian.
always, but you know what I'm saying. On average. So, anyways, I just thought it was all this diversity. They keep, this is a real. I could tell. You can always tell in an article where they're coming at you from.
Well, and funny enough, the author's a dude. So
yeah, but couldn't show a picture of him.
No, there is a picture of him. He's down here.
Is he one of the?
Yeah, he's down. He's down here in an image that is approximately
that you can't even click to make bigger. You can't even click the
Brian,
image. It's a 30 by 30 pixel image.
He is prominently listed at the end of the article in a 30 by 30 avatar image. So he is in the article.
Hey, if you open it up, you get it 70 by 70 pixels. You can almost make out.
Yeah, I know, 140 by 140. Look at that. That's a relatively high resolution image.
Oh, here, let me take off.
Look at see.
Oh, yeah, it is a 140 by 140. So yeah, you could make out what he looks like.
Looks great.
Yeah, as you can see.
Phenomenal.
I just these articles, you just look at how they do it, and it's like, they put so much time, thought, and attention. We need to make this diverse. Let's make sure we put just women in the article.
The wonderful
perfect
world,
diverse.
The wonderful times that we live in. All right, what do we got rounding out here?
All right, one thing I wanted to mention here is we've got Apple they got approved for putting the Epic Games Store on iOS, and so you're starting to see Epic removing Fortnite from the other app stores to now launch so they got rid of that Samsung Galaxy Store listing, some other ones, and now you're going to start seeing, because of all the lawsuits and the things that they won, you're gonna see Fortnite actually being in the different, like in their own store. They're having their Epic Games store inside of the store that you can then go and download. So kind of cool.
From what I'm understanding that on iOS you will install the Epic Games Store and then install Fortnite from that.
Yeah, so
that's
that'll
not
be
allowed.
there.
That doesn't work on iOS though. You can't. There's no such thing as third-party app stores. They don't exist.
But now I think they will be, right?
This is only the EU. Because that's where this all. No, this is just
that's where it started.
Yeah, because that's
this
where
might be the first one. So this is the
court
EU, iOS.
Yes, because
and
that
Android.
that court decision required it in the EU, and it had some. It wasn't GDPR. It was some other stupid law that they have over in the EU that required Apple to make changes to allow third-party things on the App Store. If you remember back to our conversation, this is not going to be relevant for U.S. players. It's not going to affect them. Apple has not mandated by a court to allow third-party app stores in the U.S. Yeah,
which will be interesting to see if this is something that they eventually do here, or if they see a lot of people using things to work around it and play through EU accounts.
Sure,
because people will do that. But yeah, this is so the Epic Games Store will launch in the EU on iOS and Android sometime this year, and on iOS in the UK during the second half of 2025. So EU in general is going to be this year. The UK is going to be the second half of 2025. I don't know why. Maybe it's because of all that GDPR stuff.
They're not part. Well, the UK is not part of the EU anymore.
Oh, that's the EU. I wonder why. Wonder why they're doing the UK separately. That's weird.
I think because
it's regulatory.
I'm sure that when the break from the EU happened, there's still a lot of law on the books in the UK that is mirroring or similar to some of the stupid EU policies that were in there. So I'm sure that's the reason why.
And it's going to be coming to the Japan iOS store next year as well.
Well, you're right. Maybe it will. Maybe it will trickle
and
down
the EU.
to the
I'm just wondering if it's going to trickle back because enough places do this. If they find that it doesn't really impact them negatively, as far as if people work around and start doing their stuff so they can go through this and just pretend to be on EU, then they probably will eventually do it. But we'll see. I'm sure they'll try to pass some laws here to make them do it too.
Well, they'll just make it impossible to. I mean, if I know anything about Apple, I know they'll make it literally impossible for you to do the location stuff. They already do. Because that's already a trick that people try.
I mean, look at what they did with text messages. I mean, Apple is finally coming around because they're practically forced just to adopt a standard when it comes to text messaging. That'd be like them not adopting a standard when it comes to internet traffic. But
which
people didn't complain.
They could totally do
with text, which they could do. But
they have enough market share. They absolutely can. Yeah.
There are standards with text messaging. There are standards with internet traffic, and they could make a browser and not abide by any standards and make you use it if they really wanted to until the law stepped in. But that's pretty much what they've done with text messaging up to this point. And it wasn't until the courts came in and said, hey, you're going to actually not purposely downgrade things when you send them to competitors, and you're going to actually communicate in the new standards that the internet is adopting for text messages. And now they're doing it. That's just how Apple and iOS is when it comes to adopting things. So this is not going to be any different. They'll make it as difficult as possible and do it dragging their feet.
Absolutely. That's what Apple's known for. All right, Brian, where can folks find you on the this place we call the internet?
All right. Well, if you want to find me, you can find me on X at Boise Computer or at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Getter, Truth Social. You can go check out my blog, biteoftech.com. But if you just go to our website, infectionpodcast.com, just go to the upper right-hand side and join us on Discord. That's a great place if you want to maybe play some ARC with us. We've got 11 ARC servers running on there. Maybe you want to talk some politics, or you want to put some links in the show news channel. And if you do that, we'll review that before the live show. It's a good way to get what you're looking at on our show. If you want to watch that live show, you can do that through Twitch or YouTube, or the upload after the fact to Rumble. We also upload after the fact to all the different podcast platforms. So the lower right-hand side, pick whatever's your favorite platform to use, the most convenient for you. And listen, if you are doing that, that means the show notes for that episode are also uploaded. You click on that one. There's a video and audio player built into that page, and also links for everything that we discussed throughout that show. So maybe you're listening and you want to see what we were looking at on the show. Just click on there and you can follow along. If you want to support us, there's a support menu option up top, or you can go to infectionpodcast.com/support.
Thank you very much, my friend. Greatly appreciated. We are off next week. I'm out of town, but we'll be back the week after, and we'll probably. I think Brian would probably scale the mountain that is our economic news, which is nearly an entire full page of Google Docs at this point. So we'll dive into that in a couple of weeks. Brian, as always, appreciate it, my friend. We'll do it again soon. Alrighty, folks, you can follow me over on X at Nicholas M. Craig, or, of course, check out my website. It's nickcraig.com. If you missed any portion of today's show, make sure you head on over to our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.